Two government teachers on a routine census visit stumble upon a house of horrors, where a family with sinister secrets lies in wait. A man stands by an electric post, noting down numbers in his notebook. Feeling thirsty, he heads to a nearby house. Knocking on the door, he hears a woman's voice and a child crying. Someone, seemingly limping, approaches to open the door. The scene shifts to Anuja, an independent lady who works as a teacher at a government school. Her family urges her to marry, but she's determined to live life on her own terms for a while longer. Her fiancé wants her to quit her job, pressuring her to settle down. She feels miserable for not being able to live her life as she pleases. The following day at school, a colleague tries striking up a conversation with Anuja, who visibly feels uneasy. Neha, another teacher, intervenes skillfully, diverting the man's attention with an errand. The headmaster tasks Anuja with conducting a government census, assigning a male partner to accompany her. Anuja expresses discomfort working with a man, prompting Neha, seated nearby, to step in as her partner. The two teachers set out, visiting houses for the census in the nearby area. They finally arrive at a secluded house in a desolate area, the same one from the earlier scene. As they knock, a strange lady cautiously cracks open the door and peeks through. Despite stating their purpose, the lady responds with only a faint smile, leaving the interaction suspicious and uncomfortable. As rain begins to pour, the duo steps inside the house to avoid getting drenched. It's inside the house that they discover the lady is pregnant. She leads them in, and the teachers initiate the census-related questions. Identified as Prerna, she reveals living with another woman, Leela, referred to as Amma, him, and their household helper, Pola. Anuja presumes him refers to Prerna's husband and inquires about her pregnancies, to which Prerna chillingly mentions babies being born but then dying after crying for a while. This response deeply unsettles the duo, especially as Anuja notices bruises near Prerna's neck. Shortly, the arrival of the old lady of the house, Leela with crutches, disrupts the conversation. She addresses the teachers rudely, coinciding with a break in the weather, prompting the duo to depart. On their way out, they encounter Pola, whose gaze strikes them uncomfortably before they start their scooter and leave. A distance away, Anuja discreetly captures a photo of the house with her phone. Upon returning to school, they encounter Neha's protective brother, Naru, inquiring about his sister, revealing his strict concern for her outings and Anuja's company. Anuja can't shake off the thought of revisiting the place and urges Neha to accompany her. Initially hesitant due to their eerie prior encounter, Neha eventually agrees after Anuja's persistent requests. The duo returns to the house, greeted by Bola, who guides them inside to meet Leela. Anuja inquires about Prerna's absence, to which Bola explains that she's ill and is currently resting. Leela then signals to Bola, prompting him to exit the room. Shortly, a middle-aged man named Ghanshyam enters the room. He is maintaining a strict vow of silence for 3 years, aiming for a total of 5. Anuja questions Leela about Prerna's pregnancy, to which she somberly reveals the loss of the baby. The unsettling atmosphere and odd behavior of the inhabitants prompt the girls to depart hastily. However, as rain starts pouring once again, Bola insists they wait inside until it stops, coaxing the two girls to agree and re-enter the house. As it's time for dinner inside, everyone gathers at the dining table. When Neha is about to start eating, Ghanshyam, seated beside her, halts her. Leela, on the other hand, queries Bola about their pet cow, Ganga, confirming its feeding. When Bola confirms that he has fed Ganga, the family continue with their meal. At the dining table, Anuja notices Prerna's unusual way of eating. With the rain making it difficult to leave, the girls resign themselves to spending the night in the house, engaging in discussions about the bizarre family members and their odd behaviors. Meanwhile, Neha receives a call from her brother and decides to deceive him to avoid his anger. However, Bola, while delivering water, eavesdrops on the conversation. He hurries to Ghanshyam and discloses the girl's lie, pleading with him for something desperately, his expression nearly changing to miserable. Ghanshyam declines his request, leaving Bola disheartened as he exits. Leela, who had been resting nearby, intervenes, poking Ghanshyam for often refusing Bola, hinting at a potential sinister backstory behind Bola's persistent pleas for permission. Anuja, unable to sleep, peers out the window and witnesses Ghanshyam sneaking toward the outside warehouse in the dead of night. As she watches, she's startled to see what seems like a lifeless figure inside the warehouse. Panic seizes her. Anuja wakes Neha up and shares her alarming discovery. Neha, skeptical and concerned about Anuja's certainty, suggests that the only way to confirm the truth is to investigate themselves by entering the warehouse. Together, they bravely enter the warehouse, only to be met with the distressing sight of an unconscious and severely injured person. This is the same individual we saw earlier inspecting the electric poles. The terrified girls sprint in different directions, but eventually reunite. They hear distant cries of wild animals in the pitch-black darkness. Realizing they had left their phones behind, they decide to return to the house to retrieve them for help. Back in their room, they find their phones drained due to low battery. Fearing the family's awareness of their discovery, they opt to stay the night, planning to leave next morning. As they depart the next morning on their scooter, Pola tries to stop them, but they push ahead. Leela alerts Ghanshyam about the girls' knowledge of their activities, making him and Bola chase after them. Their escape attempt fails as the scooter gets stuck in a ditch. Ghanshyam and Bola capture them after a struggle, resulting in injuries. They bring the girls back to the house, tie them up, and lock them in a basement room. Fear and desperation grip the girls, feeling trapped with no apparent way out. In the locked room, Neha's cries for help pushes Bola to throw hot water at her, silencing her in agonizing pain. In anguish and terror, Neha retreats to a corner, tearfully blaming Anuja for their dire situation. Meanwhile, Anuja's fiancé visits her apartment but finds her missing. He inquires with the landlord about her whereabouts. Simultaneously, Neha's brother arrives there too, looking for his sister. Upon encountering Anuja's fiancé, he shared his anger about Anuja's alleged negative influence on his sister, sparking a heated argument that only stopped with the landlord's intervention. In the house, Anuja begins to suspect that Prerna might be another victim rather than Ghanshyam's wife. Kept in the same room they are trapped in, adding to their distress. When Anuja bangs at the door and cries out loud, Ghanshyam and Bola come downstairs to unleash attacks on the two helpless girls. After that, we see Ghanshyam making love with Prerna upstairs in a disturbing way. Later at night, Bola goes to feed the girls. When Neha denies having the food, he resorts to brute force. Anuja kicks Bola to stop him, but this only angers him further. He proceeds to attack her and almost kills her by choking her. Later, Anuja manages to untie her hands and then helps Neha. They see a vent and start climbing it to escape from the room. They successfully climb outside, but Neha then sees that her brother has arrived outside and is talking with Ghanshyam and Bola. She calls his name, but then suddenly she witnesses her brother being killed by Ghanshyam, using a big rock by smashing his head. Neha is devastated by this and is captured by Bola. Meanwhile, Anuja is hiding in the warehouse in the middle of all this. There she meets the guy whom she earlier thought was dead. He tells her that he has been tied in there for days. He also tells her that the old man kills the babies as soon as they are born. Prerna points towards the warehouse from upstairs where Anuja is hiding. Ghanshyam enters the warehouse to capture her, but the guy inside holds him back by grabbing his leg to help her escape. Ghanshyam kills that guy and starts running after Anuja. Anuja manages to lose track of Ghanshyam, but she is injured and barely able to run. She decides to go back to the house, as it would be hard for her to run away in that state. At the house, Bola asks Ghanshyam again if he can go now. This time, Ghanshyam permits him. Bola gets ready and goes to the room where Neha is kept. He forces himself on her, and despite all her efforts to get him off, he overpowers her. Anuja is terrified by hearing Neha's loud cries. Ghanshyam then drags Anuja next to the room where Neha is being violated, and makes her witness the sight with her own eyes. After going through so much, the girls are broken from the inside. Later that night, Anuja manages to escape again, and this time on her way out she sets fire to Ganga. Ghanshyam and Bola try to extinguish the fire, but fail to do so. Ghanshyam takes out his anger on Bola. Bola too is filled with rage and decides to go after Anuja with a knife. Meanwhile, Prerna comes to meet Neha inside the room where she is locked. Neha asks her why she didn't save the girls from all this by simply dropping a hint at first. To this, Prerna asked her to keep quiet, or else her father would beat her too. Neha couldn't understand whom Prerna was referring to as a father. Prerna continues that her father beats her if she doesn't obey him but doesn't do much if she listens to him. He feeds him and lets her stay when she obeys him. One time when her mother didn't listen to him, her father ended up killing her. At this point, Neha realizes that Ghanshyam is Prerna's father and not her husband. The monster was violating his own daughter all these years. Neha asks her to let her escape, but she leaves by telling her to stay quiet. But after some time, she comes back and opens the lock of the room for Neha. On the other hand, Bola is searching for Anuja in the dark. A vengeful Anuja jumps at him from behind and attacks him with a stick. She proceeds to kill him with the knife he himself brought. Ghanshyam hears the shrieks of Bola. He locks the house from the inside in response. Both Neha and Anuja unite outside. Neha discloses to her the relationship between Prerna and Ghanshyam. This makes Anuja's blood boil, and she heads back towards the house to hunt down the monster. The girls enter the house from the vent they used to escape earlier. Ghanshyam realizes that the girls have entered the house. She searches for them at the rooftop. Anuja attacks him in rage, and a combat starts between the two individuals. Meanwhile, Leela attacks Neha by stabbing her leg with a knife, but soon Neha overpowers her and kills her with that knife. An enraged Anuja mercilessly assaults Ghanshyam with her attacks and pushes him off the roof. Even a fall off the roof wasn't enough to kill the monster instantly. He lets out a shriek, breaking his vow of silence, calling out Leela, who is already dead by now. Anuja comes down to finish the job and ends Ghanshyam's life for good, while Prerna watches from upstairs. Thank for watching. Please subscribe the Explanation Pro for more interesting contents like this.